Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, for 30 minutes.
I appreciate the Speaker, and as usual, I appreciate my friend from Arizona who is, if nothing else, dogged in his determination and consistent in making clear to the American people the problem that we face in our overall spending, including mandatory, and specifically mandatory as we refer to it, this broad basket of things that we have committed to do that is consuming our budget ever more every single year. And it's an important point, and one that we don't discuss enough as a body on what we should do about it. And the gentleman's point is precisely correct about the nature of the problem, the seriousness of the problem. I mean, when we're sitting here right now and we're roughly, I'm going to use ballpark numbers, bringing in $4 trillion of revenue, but we are spending about $6 trillion. We are then sitting at, and pushing 7. He's right. It depends on what we're talking about in terms of the accounting. But basically what you're saying is you are printing money to fund effectively all of our discretionary budget and then some. What I mean by that is you're printing money to fund defense. You're printing money to fund the operations of government, the Department of Justice. You're printing money to fund the Department of Homeland Security, all of the things that you touch and feel and see, because the $4 trillion is going to fund Medicare, Social Security, food stamps, some veterans benefits that are mandatory, plus interest. There you are. You've used up all of your revenue. But the problem is nobody in this town wants to do anything about it. My Democratic colleagues will hide behind, you must increase taxes. My Republican colleagues will do nothing to actually limit spending in any meaningful way. They'll just talk about ultimately needing to deal with mandatory spending one day and not do anything to deal with the spending issues now. Now, where I depart from my friend from Arizona, respectfully, who's no longer on the floor, but where I depart is I want to, maybe not depart, where I want to be more clear is the questions when we have debates on the floor of the House about spending items in what we call discretionary. That is the stuff that we can touch, the accounts, the Department of Defense, some of these issues. My issue with that is less about mounting debt, although it's a part of it. It's that you're funding the demise of our prosperity. You're funding the bureaucrats who are at war with us. You're funding that which is undermining our ability to create economic growth and live freely to get out from under that financial morass. In other words, you're not going to really address the debt problem by saving $5 billion on some small item. But what you are going to do is you're going to stop the interference for the American people. Let me give you some examples. If you're a hardworking American out there and have a family of 4 and you're a plumber in San Marcos, Texas, which I represent part of, and you're just trying to go about doing your job. You need a pickup truck, you need to put all your stuff in it, you need to be able to drive around. We're making that pickup truck impossible to afford. We're making it literally impossible to afford. We're putting all of these requirements and demands in the vehicles. We're now going to make it where you got to have electric vehicles with tailpipe rules and mandating it as they pile up on lots. And they're getting more expensive. You want to go get your windshield replaced? It's like $1,500 now instead it used to be $200 or $300. Why? Because it's got all sorts of mandates and requirements and gadgets in the windshields. Now they're going to mandate the vehicles have automatic braking. Like every time you do that, you make this stuff more expensive. The market should bear that out. The market should sort that out. If you want a vehicle that has automatic braking, great, pay for it. But the vast majority of Americans would say, no, I can't afford that. I just want a simple car. But we're killing the ability of the average family to afford life. And it matters. This is the problem. What we have become in the House of Representatives, what we have become is the house of perpetuating corporate cronyism and the enrichment of a handful of folks at the expense of hardworking American families. And then I'll have some of my colleagues who will throw out these random statements like, we should read the philosophers of the conservatives of the past who were the traditionalists who are rational in what they believe in limited government, not the radical populists of today. I think that misses the entire point. It is not populist to believe we should stop spending money we don't have, driving up inflation, driving down the value of the dollar, and putting a tax on the hardworking American family. It's not populist to say that we shouldn't regulate our entire lives out of existence with expensive vehicles and all sorts of demands on what you can and can't do, which makes things more expensive, or all of the green climate agenda that is empowering China, undermining our ability to have affordable energy. That's not populism. It's not populism to say that maybe, just maybe, if you're going to send $95 billion overseas to fund war, maybe you should have to pay for that. That's not populist, it's rational. You can question the war. You could say that we should be focusing on America first, securing our borders first. Maybe you could say that's populist. I think it's rational. It's sovereignty. The founders, and importantly, the conservative thought leaders of the 20th century, like Russell Kirk, believed that you actually do have to have institutions, yes, but you believe in sovereignty. You believe in the rule of law, right? You believe that there's supposed to be limits to what you do in, feeding your appetite. But what are our limits? I'm sitting here in an empty chamber, but my friend who's serving as the speaker at the moment, what are our limits? What limits are we placing on this place? So to my friends who voted for, in continuing wars around the world, $95 billion, who paid for it? Your grandkids, your kids, you paid for it by printing money. We did not pay for it. We printed money to give it away. Same thing with the first $113 billion for Ukraine. Same thing for virtually everything we're doing. And I ask my colleagues, I've had some supporters, particularly ones of financial means, who have called and said, Chip, why could you abandon the people of Ukraine? We must stop Putin. I say, great. Are you interested in having a 70% marginal tax rate next year to pay for it? Crickets on the other end of the phone. We've lost perspective on what we're supposed to do here responsibly in this chamber. That's the truth. And while we sit here, and while we move a few bills across the floor, and while we've just passed a massive foreign aid package, unpaid for, that funds both sides of the war in Israel, gives $9 billion used by Hamas, used to have refugees, the Palestinian refugees moving to the United States, funding both sides of that conflict, while we fund Ukraine, where we have no clear mission, no evidence that we can produce enough ammo fast enough to be able to help them when they're getting outshelled no matter what, and they're running out of men. Okay, even if you accept that all of that might result in some improvement, we're funding all of that. We just voted on all of that. We just voted on an anti-Semitism resolution, which codifies thought speech, so we can pat ourselves on the back and say, look at what we did. Look what we did. People feel good about it. But you didn't do a damn thing, and in fact, you made things worse because you just empowered the federal government to go after thought speech. So we do all of that. Right after, what did we do? Passed a massive omnibus spending bill, $1.7 trillion in 2 omnibus packages. Funded a $200 million for a new FBI headquarters, an FBI which is out of control. We do all those things. What is happening in the meantime? What is happening right now? What is happening right now is our borders are wide open. The people in Texas are still feeling it every single day. We're dealing with the reality of roughly 1,000 to 1,600 people a day, 1,000 to 1,600 people a day being paroled into the United States. What that means is, nobody out there in the real world knows what that means. It means that there's a provision in the law, supposedly there for a case-by-case basis to help a few people. The Biden administration is blatantly, unlawfully, illegally using that provision to expand it and dump literally 1,000 to 1,600 people a day. We believe 400,000 over the last year, according to the reports that we have, being dumped into the United States under what is called parole. And guess what? How did Laken Riley's killer get into the United States? Parole. There have been dozens of examples of individuals who are paroled into the United States under the Biden administration's policies who have gone on to kill, assault, and harm and undermine the security of Americans. Think about that. That's what's happening right now, allegedly on our watch. And the fact is, we could have done something about it. A year ago this Saturday, Republicans passed what we call H.R. 2, which is the bill number for border security. It was a strong bill that would have closed the ability of the Biden administration to abuse parole. It would have closed their ability to abuse asylum. It would have ended the abuse of the unaccompanied alien children to use them as essentially a hall pass to get into the United States. It would have fundamentally ended the Biden administration's abuse of law to dump people into the United States to the tune of something like 4.5 million people who have been released into the United States under the Biden administration. We did that. Republicans did that, and we did that after conservatives worked hard to work with the Speaker to force this body of Republicans to walk away from the amnesty-driven, Chamber of Commerce-driven failure of the last 2 decades and pass a strong border security measure. That bill is sitting over in the Senate, where Senate Democrats refuse to move it, while they hide behind a sham piece of legislation which would not secure the border of the United States so they can try to blame Republicans in an election year. But what Republicans have failed to do is use the leverage of the power of purse to force our Democratic colleagues in the Senate and the Biden administration to come to the table and deal with the border crisis, despite the rhetoric of our own leadership saying that we would do that. We have fully funded the government at debt increasing levels, busting the caps that were put into law, and we're funding the government that is abusing our borders and dumping people into the United States unlawfully, paying off student loans unlawfully to the tune of $700 billion to $1.4 trillion, while we rack up now $34.5 trillion of debt, barreling towards $35 trillion every 3 months, more interest than we pay on the national defense, almost $1 trillion of interest, barreling towards $2 to $3 trillion of interest, all while our retirees are growing, demands on Medicare are growing, cost prices of health care are going up. That's all happening right now in real time, and what are we doing about it? And this is a question that I want to ask my Republican colleagues. If the American people look at our Democratic colleagues and say, man, that's insanity. We can't do that. That's crazy stuff. They want to have all sorts of woke policies and DEI, and they want to let criminals out, and they want wide open borders, and they want to keep spending gobs of money. They want to undermine our Western civilization, our way of life. Go down every issue. They say, man, that's crazy. I don't want that. So they say, well, we got to turn to Republicans, so let's vote for Republicans. Let's say that happens. Let's say we're fortunate enough for that to happen with large enough numbers that we have the majority of the House, the majority of the Senate, and the White House. What are we going to do? I will bet you a significant amount that you will hear excuses out of this chamber by Republicans in January with a newly minted majority here in the Senate and in the White House. They will say the following: Chip, we don't have 60 votes in the Senate. What you want can't be done. Chip, we have divisions in our own caucus, our own Republican majority. We can't pass everything you want to pass and then get it through the Senate and send it to the president. So we're going to have to send over this compromise. It's been happening for decades. The reason our borders are wide open, it didn't just materialize one day that Joe Biden just woke up and decided to open them up. It's been decades in the making with support from Republicans because they were too much in the pocket of Chamber of Commerce. And they were sitting down on the Rio Grande with a no trespassing sign and then over here with a sign saying, wink, wink, help wanted. Come on in. We don't care about the border. That was happening. I know because I saw it. I saw it as a Texan. I saw it as an American. I saw it as a staffer on the Senate Judiciary Committee. As a chief of staff to Ted Cruz. I saw the amnesty bills. I saw the desire to have cheap labor at the expense of sovereignty. But let's talk for a minute about that cheap labor. I keep hearing from all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, frankly, how important it is for us to continue to have a flow of people across our border, legal or illegal, because, quote, we need the workers. Have you looked at what's happening to jobs? The jobs for Americans, American-born workers, post-COVID is flat or down. The actual engagement in the workforce, flat or down. Yes, there's growth from migrants to try to catch up on the number, but what we are doing is we're paying people not to work. We're paying kids to sit in their room, basement, whatever, playing Fortnite. Kids, they're in their 20s. We have low workforce participation from American citizens and workers while we try to then bring people in who, by the way, then use the social welfare state, who then have massive demands on the education system. How do I know that? I live in Texas. I see the schools. I see the roles. Tomorrow in the Budget Committee, we're going to have a hearing on the cost, the impact of illegal immigration. Kinney County, Texas, just a little bit southwest of San Antonio, which I represent. We're going to have a witness here tomorrow from Kinney County walking us through roughly these numbers. The crime that they were dealing with in 2021, pre-Biden, was about 140-something crimes a year that they had to deal with. They're now at 15,000. Now, that's a lot of criminal trespass that the Operation Lone Star and the State Department of Public Safety are trying to work to manage, but that's what they're dealing with. That's what they're dealing with in their court systems. And I can sit here and walk you through. We'll have a hearing tomorrow. I won't do it here. Walk you through the impact on the schools, the hospitals, all of the social services. And anybody who does a legitimate analysis of all of those costs compared to the taxes, sales taxes, which so many of my colleagues hang their hat on and say, this is causing economic activity and they're paying taxes. And yes, there is some of that. But we have created the welfare state, which Milton Friedman famously said, I'm all for open borders if you get rid of the welfare state. Now that's pre-9/11, so let's say you have security. You vet everybody, you know who's coming here, do they want to harm us? There's hardworking people, they want to achieve the American dream. If you have a zero welfare state, I'd say come on. I don't care where you're from, I don't care what you look like, come on. Because if you're coming to America and you're making your way, and you're going to work hard, then you're going to follow our values and our principles, regardless of your background, regardless of your religion, because you're going to believe in the rule of law. You're going to believe in economic prosperity. You're going to believe in free enterprise and capitalism. You're most likely going to believe in God and everything that made this country great because you're coming here seeking the American dream. But we are turning the American dream upside down. We are destroying that which migrants come to this country to achieve when they come here to believe in this country, believe in the rule of law, because that's what the American dream is built around. And we're completely destroying it. That's the truth. And it's happening right now while we sit here and fiddle while America burns. I'm going to say it over and over and over again until at least my Republican colleagues who try to pretend to give a crap about the border actually do something about it. How many campaign ads, how many speeches are going to be given by my Republican colleagues between now and November about what they will do to secure the border? And what are they doing right now? Shrugging. Sorry, can't do anything. It's Biden. What are we going to do? How many more Americans are going to die while we shrug? Well, thank God the founders didn't shrug. Thank God the men at Lexington and Concord didn't just shrug and say, oh, well, I guess there's a tyrant. Thank God the boys at Normandy didn't shrug and say, why the hell are we across the ocean and we got to go take out this crazy guy Hitler? Thank God they did it. Thank God the boys of the Alamo didn't shrug. But we're shrugging it off. We're pretending it's not happening. I mean, is anybody paying attention to what's happening in London? I'm going to say it here on the floor of the House and get the scorn of people when I say, you've got a massive Muslim takeover of the United Kingdom going on right before our eyes. They would say, Chip, well, what is wrong with that? Well, I've got some pretty strong concerns about Sharia law and whether that'll be forced upon the American people. In this case, the people of the United Kingdom. I've got pretty strong concerns about people who want to see Israel's destruction, who were happy about October 7th, who were elected in the United Kingdom. Some might say that we've seen that here in the United States. What are we going to do about that? We have 51.5 million people who are foreign born in the United States. They have about 20 to 25 million kids. That puts that well over 20-something% of our population. It's the highest such number in the history of our country. People say, well, isn't that great? Is it? Are we teaching people about Western civilization? Are we teaching people about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the rule of law? Are we teaching them Western values? Are we teaching them God exists? Are we teaching them the importance of freedom? Or are we teaching an entire generation or two or three to run around complaining about what's wrong and why the entire world is against them because of their skin color, their sex, their supposed gender identity, whatever the hell category we create to make people have an excuse for not just stepping up and achieving the American dream? But that's what we're doing. Our borders are wide open. People go, well, it's bad. I mean, it's bad, Chip. What do you do about it? Stop it. Like, actually stop it. But we literally just gave away every ounce of leverage we have. Why? To fund Ukraine. Unpaid for. With no clear mission. We said, who cares about America's border? Sorry, Chip, we couldn't get it done. So I got to go back to the people of Texas and say, well, sorry, we'll get them next time. Look, nobody I know, conservative, moderate, Democrat, nobody comes here expecting to get everything you want. It is a body of representatives. It's the worst form of government except for all the others. I get it. But I'm sick and tired of watching this play out the same way every single time. The American people get screwed and get left holding the bag. That's the truth. Every single hardworking family across this country right now who can't afford groceries, can't afford electricity, can't afford to buy a car, can't send their kid to a school that they can believe will teach them the right thing, teach them God exists, teach them their country's great, even just teach them that there's man and woman. No, none of that. We're funding this radical climate agenda that's destroying our ability to have energy. Right now, you're not going to have an internal combustion engine in 10 years because these radical nuts are killing your ability to do it, and Republicans are sitting back and shrugging. Patting ourselves on the back for increasing mining for rare earth minerals in Minnesota or around this country, rather than fully opening up American oil and gas, building American nuclear power. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. The average American right now is wondering whether or not they can actually achieve the American dream. And I want to know whether my colleagues in this chamber, Democrat or Republican, would come to the microphone and give a rip-roaring speech right now about why every American should believe they're going to be able to achieve the American dream. Because I will tell you right now, unless we lead, unless we take this moment to reverse the direction we're headed, change trajectory, massively shift the direction of our country, then our kids and our grandkids will not be able to achieve the American dream. They won't. He'll chip, well, how does that sell? Because what I'm selling is a duty to fight. What I'm selling is a duty to go fight to make sure those American kids and grandkids can achieve the American dream, to fight for sovereignty, to fight for citizenship, to introduce legislation to demand that citizens only vote, to stand up and fight for the opportunity to go carry out your life because you can afford to do it because you've gotten rid of all of the regulations that are constraining the hardworking American. Go get rid of the corporate cronyism, enriching the insurance companies, enriching all of the big corporations across this country and hospitals and pharma, and strip it away. Get rid of the middlemen and empower doctors and patients and get all that crap out of the way so people can actually go get health care. Do that. Cut the government bureaucracy. Get rid of the bureaucrats. Get rid of the DEI. Get rid of the critical race theory. Go to war with the bureaucrats, metaphorically, to stop destroying the American dream. Don't just sit here and come here and give speeches about some basketball team that won the national championship. Go home and say, look at me. I gave a speech about the basketball championship. Who cares? Their parents can't afford to live. We have a duty in the people's house to do something. The iceberg is right in front of us. My friend, Mr. Schweikert, just explained it. We are massively upside down. We are bleeding out of every pore of our body in terms of money and debt. Our borders are wide open. We are increasingly unchurched. Our schools are indoctrinating our kids. Our universities are indoctrination camps. They're essentially daycares for elitists. And we just forgave their debts, student loans. Every hardworking American out there deserves a representative that represents them. Democrat or Republican, conservative, moderate, liberal. Why are you here? What's the point? Why get elected? Why get an election certificate? The point is to stand up in defense of the rule of law and the Constitution. If you say you believe in limited government, limit it. If you say you believe in cutting spending, cut it. If you say you believe in securing the border, secure it. If you say you believe in a peace through strength, then stop sending our military and our money in endless conflict and instead build a strong military here, sparingly used, make sure our men and women have the care when they get home, and send a message around the world that when we use force, it'll be used quickly and massively. This is what the people I represent want. They don't want any more of these feel-good bills because some organization declares a week. Happens all the time. Teacher week, got to do a teacher bill. Cop week, got to do a cop bill. None of that is going to make this country freer or stronger or more secure. We took an oath to the Constitution. I don't want any more excuses about, well, Chip, this only offends the Commerce Clause a little bit. This one's better than that other version. Stop doing it. Go the other direction. Stop selling watered down Democrat light and go inspire the American people with something better so that the kids of this generation can get their lives out of these phones and get their lives out of the despair of wondering whether they're going to be able to have the American dream, and give them hope that if they go out and they work hard and they save money, they're going to be able to get a house, have a family, they're going to get health care because they worked hard and they were able to do it. That's why migrants come here. Stop paying people not to work. Stop the endless nonsense and drivel that comes out of this body in the name of doing something. And instead, stand up and fight for the American people. Don't give lip service on June 6th because it's the 80th anniversary about what those boys did when they walked into a wall of bullets. Stand up and do a fraction of what they did by having the nerve to vote no on something, even though somebody might tweet something mean about it. I yield back.
Thank you. The Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr.